He left the trailhead before dawn because the heat after noon could break a man. The Superstition Mountains rose in dark shapes ahead, serrated against a thin band of light. Chola leaned into the path like barbed warnings. Saguaro stood watch. He carried water, a small pick, a worn compass, and a sheet of directions copied from a dying man's words. Follow the gulch to the place where the mountain opens to the west. Look for a shadow that moves like a door. Somewhere beyond that door, the story said, a ledge of yellow gleamed even when the rest lay in shade. The legend did not begin with him. It began with Jacob Waltz, a German immigrant who came to Arizona Territory in the 1860s. Folks called him the Dutchman because Deutsch sounded like Dutch, and the name stuck. Waltz worked claims along the Salt River, drifted toward the Superstitions, and now and then brought in ore that made assayers raise their eyebrows. It was good rock, quartz shot through with gold, but no official mine of his produced it. Waltz kept quiet about his source. He preferred cash to conversation, and when someone asked where the vein ran, he smiled and changed the subject. In the winter of 1891, the Salt River flooded and Waltz, old and wheezing, took shelter with a Phoenix neighbor, a storekeeper named Julia Thomas. On what people later called his deathbed, he traded hints for care. A needle of rock, a shaded canyon where afternoon sun cut in like a blade, a place where a man could toss a stone across a gulch and strike a face of metal. His words were not a map. They were a riddle, useful only to someone who had already been there. He died that year. Julia sold ice cream to fund a search, hired 2 partners, and marched into the mountains with July already burning. They came back blistered and broke, mocked by the paper for chasing Julia's lost mine. But the questions did not stop. If Waltz had no mine, where did his gold come from? If he did, why could no one else find it? Other stories rose to meet the questions. People talked about a Mexican family named Peralta, working a rich claim in the 1840s and being driven off or killed on the trail home. Later, carved stones appeared, hearts, crosses, numbers, a rough chart to a fortune. Some swore the stones were genuine, others called them a modern joke. Either way, the idea took root. Somewhere inside that maze of black rock lay a pocket of astonishing wealth. In a hard country, hope spreads fast. Hope also kills. In 1912, an old prospector announced he had located rock that matched Waltz's and would lead men back. He vanished. In 1931, Adolph Ruth, a Washington map maker with a limp and a stubborn streak, packed into the Superstitions with directions he believed were true. Weeks later, searchers found his skull in a wash and, later still, the rest of his remains. A note in his gear reportedly boasted he had found it. Whether he did or not, the desert kept its answer. He was not the last. A soldier on leave, a miner from Superior, 2 brothers who trusted a photocopied map. Some were found, some never were. The mountains are not gentle. In summer, the heat presses from above and radiates from the ground. In winter, storms trap cold air in the canyons and turn dry gravel into sudden creeks. A wrong turn can put you on a slope that looks passable until you are committed, and then the only way down is the way a rock chooses. Distance is a liar out here. Lines on a map mean less than the angle in your knees. People who go missing are often only a ridge from safety, but a ridge in the Superstitions can be a wall. Every version of Waltz's directions includes signs: a spire, a cave mouth, a spring that runs sweet after a hard rain, a ledge that appears for 1 hour in the afternoon and vanishes again. The trouble is repetition. There are dozens of spires, 100 cave mouths, and shadows that play tricks. A map, drawn from memory, becomes a map to anywhere, and the closer a person comes to believing, the easier it is to make the country fit the picture in his head. Some things are certain. Waltz possessed high-grade gold. Assay bars linked to him still exist. The source is the question. Was it a true vein known only to him, a hidden cache taken from someone else, or a lucky pocket he cleaned out and then protected with silence? People who knew him remembered two beliefs. A mine should be used before it is talked about, and talk can kill a claim faster than water or collapse. Geology does not promise what the legend sells. The superstitions are volcanic tough and breccia, spectacular to look at and stingy with certain kinds of ore. Yet Arizona produces surprises. Every few years, someone comes down with a specimen that looks right. Iron-stained red, quartz bright, a flash of metal, and the talk starts again. Hands tremble over rocks for reasons that are not entirely rational. By mid-century, the range was a magnet for hobbyists and diehards. Some brought metal detectors and faith in instruments. Others carried a bedroll and bacon and the same confidence that fueled Julia's march. Rangers stapled warnings to trailhead boards about water and first aid. Helicopters lifted out hikers who had been certain their route was good until it wasn't. The hunt for a mine turned, again and again, into hunts for the living. Ask the Apache, and you will hear older cautions. The range they called Cycol carried stories long before Waltz, places where you do not linger. The mountains hold power. Respect is not optional. Outsiders heard Superstition and wrote the warnings off. The name fixed on the map, and with it, a dare. Even now, the pull is strong. Before sunrise, the parking lot fills. Someone studies a photocopy that claims to be the cleanest version yet. Another hiker refuses to post a photo because a line of shadow might be a clue. The sun climbs, heat builds, wind moves through a narrow slot and speaks a language you think you almost understand. Back in town, a woman keeps her grandfather's cigar box of clippings, the skull in a wash, a vanished pair of brothers, a photograph of Waltz staring past the camera with a look you can read as secrecy or amusement. Maybe there is no mine the way people imagine, a tunnel with timbers and a tidy face of ore. Maybe it was a pocket scratched out and hidden, or a cache buried by men scared of ambush on the road north. Maybe Waltz bought the ore cheap and let the desert tell a better story on his behalf. Or maybe he climbed to a ledge only the sun reveals and took what he could carry, leaving the rest for someone who never learned all the turns. The desert does not owe an answer. What endures are the consequences. Families waiting on porches, watching the eastern sky because a father promised Friday. Deputies following buzzards and finding a hat before they find a body. Bars of gold locked behind glass with a tag that says Waltz. A place that convinces you one more ridge, one more bend, one more day will be enough. If you go, the advice is simple and not romantic. Carry more water than you think you need. Tell someone where you are headed and when you will be back. Do not trust a morning shadow to behave in the afternoon. Heat is a thief. Pride is worse. The superstitions are beautiful and indifferent. They do not bargain. The man from this morning's trail reached a ridge and saw a canyon open to the west. For one breath he believed he understood the old directions. The sun cut a narrow slot across a broken wall and made the rock glow the color of promise. He took a step, then another, and stopped. He drank, judged the line between hope and mistake, and turned downhill. The pull remained behind him, patient as ever, waiting for the next set of footsteps to come and listen. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.